Good evening, everyone. Make sure that I am doing everything I need to do. And I make sure that my little snowflakes are where they need to be for later. We're gonna do something fun with the snowflakes. Okay, so hello. Welcome in and good evening. Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday evening. We are a little over a week away from Christmas, and that means this time next week when I get on live, I will not have to go to work in the morning. How are you doing, Shamir? I am also excited, and I'll talk about it a couple times throughout the live. I am finally finished. I'll be finally finished the last block for the Jolly Bar 5 quilt along sampler quilt. And so we have one more block to do today, and it's called X's and O's. And it is, it's an XOXO quilt. And so we're only doing one of the blocks from that XO, and we'll show you that, how that comes together. So, we're going to be working on that block today. That is the goal. This should not be a long live because the block is easy, and most of the blocks that we have worked on for the Jolly Bar have been very much the same, meaning that they have been using a lot of half square triangles in order to create this. Thank you, Sammy. So these blocks, the links are in my bio, but these patterns are part of a collection, and the collection is called Denim and Daisies. And Denim and Daisies is a combination of oranges and blues, and they run from light to dark with a ton of prints. And so we have been going through each block and making it very scrappy using Denim and Daisies, and deciding which ones we want to use and which ones we don't want to use. So I really love this. This is part of what we have for the Fat Quarter Shop, which is called a Jolly Bar. And so a Jolly Bar is a pre-cut. It's a collection of fabric, and they're pre-cuts that are 5 inches by 10 inches. They are half of a layer cake. So, of course, my other Jolly Bars are packed up because I'm down to the end, but this is what a Jolly Bar would look like. It would be 5 inches by 10 inches. And so if we look at the entire layer cake, it looks like this. So half of that pre-cut is this. So because the Fat Quarter Shop and other quilt shops will sell pre-cuts, from different fabric collections, then they come up with patterns that you can use those pre-cuts for. Does that mean you're limited to the pre-cut? Absolutely not. How are you doing, Miss Karen? How are you today? So you're not limited to the pre-cut. It's just, hey, here's the pre-cut. So we worked on this weekend 2 layer cake patterns. I had layer cakes in my stash, but I absolutely could have used my stash instead of the layer cake. So you're not bound to the pre-cut. It's just, hey, here's a great pattern you can use that is perfect for the pre-cut if you have those pre-cuts in your stash. So Jolly Bars are specific to the Fat Quarter Shop, so those pre-cuts can only be purchased through the Fat Quarter Shop. So what they do is they come up with, pattern books that you can use those Jolly Bars for. So this is the Jolly Bar book, volume 5. I know I forgot to do something. I forgot to turn this around so that we could see it the right way. I hate when it's mirrored. It just drives me crazy trying to read backwards. So this is the Jolly Bar 5, volume 5. And so again, this comes with 20 Jolly Bar quilt patterns. But the great thing about this is everything that you make is a block, and then the blocks are just repeated. So that makes the pattern a little bit easier for folks than if you were making a different block. Like some quilts will have one block this way, another block that way. And so then you're changing your measurements and your sizing. You're making so many of them. You have to keep track of them. This way you're making one block so many times so that you can put them together and create a quilt. Inside of the book, there are again 20 patterns, and these are all of the samples of the blocks that make up the quilts. So you'll learn how to make these 20 blocks, and these 20 blocks, however, which one you decide to do, you can make a quilt out of them. What I like about these is that you could make one block and then make a pillow. You could use one block or 3 blocks or 4 blocks, and you could make a table runner or a table topper. So you're not married to the quilt. So that's totally up to you how you want to do it. You don't have to make it as scrappy. You could absolutely go with less colors. So I marked everything. You can find all the information on the Fat Quarter Shop web page for which blocks we use for the sampler. So we are working with this one down here, which is XOXO, and you can see that they gave the sample of the X. So we're doing the X, not the O, but I'll show you that they will be the same thing, depending on which one you want it, but we're going with the X. So we already have all of our fabrics cut out, and again, there are 4 patches in this, and they will be these fabrics along with these white backgrounds, and the same fabrics will then also come together to make the half square triangles. I have already marked a diagonal from corner to corner for my half square triangles, so let's go ahead and get half square triangles out of the way first. Traditionally, when we are working with half square triangles, we try at all costs to have it on the lighter fabric. That way you can see it, especially when you lay the two together. You can see that line that you drew. You're going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of the line. If I am concerned about my cuts, like maybe I had to fudge a little bit, especially with a pre-cut. Sometimes when you starch or iron pre-cuts, especially if you use steam, the water will cause the fabric to tighten up or to shrink a little. And so that means that if the pre-cut was 5 inches, it might be like 4 7/8. And it doesn't shrink that much, but sometimes their cuts could be off. Sometimes, you know, it'll shrink just a little bit more than you want it to. So sometimes I will go what is called a scant 1/4 inch. I'll do a little less than a 1/4 inch closer to the line. That way it gives me more of a half square triangle to work with, and then I can square that half square triangle up. So we'll take it to the machine. You know me, I love chain stitching. So I'm just going to do one right after the other, right after the other. Let me get on this, let me pull up for a second. Pull this out because I did not get where I wanted it to go. Okay. Let me pull that back here. Okay. So again, they will tell you to go right on the line. I'm going right next to the line. I have a 1/4 inch foot on my machine. And so my 1/4 inch foot, when it's running along the line, is running a little off from that line to make sure that I am getting at least a scant 1/4 inch. So I'm going to take, there's only 4 of these for my half square triangles. Each one of these will make 2 half square triangles. Hey, good evening, little bit. How are you doing this evening? I am bright-eyed and bushy-tailed because somebody came home and took a nap. And we're just going to lay this one out. So again, we have 4. This is number 3. And I'm only doing one side right now. If you're not into chain piecing, you could turn this around and then just flip and do the other side. And do the same thing for each. It's up to you which way you want to do it, but either way is fine. And we'll get to this last one. And again, like this is the part where it's on one side. If I just flip them around, I can automatically do the other side. So I get both accomplished. So we're just sewing a 1/4 inch or a little less on either side. So for this sampler quilt, there are 10 blocks in the sampler quilt. The great thing about sampler quilts is that you are just getting to try out different blocks. And you know, you may decide later, like, I really like making that block. I think I want to make a whole quilt with that block. So this gives you a chance to try out different ones and then to go from there to determine if you would like to make a whole quilt with it. And the great thing is that for the 20 blocks that are there, even if you make one, most patterns, if you purchase them online or in the store, for the cost of this book is the same as one pattern. So I don't have to use all the patterns in the book. If I use 1 or 2, I've already gotten my money's worth. So I don't feel pressured to do every single one. I'm just going to take this and line it up right on that line that I drew. I'm cutting in between the 2 seams that I stitched. And let me pull this up a little bit closer so you can see that. I drew the line that's in the center, and then this is white, but on either side, I stitched that 1/4 inch. I'm just taking my ruler, placing it back on that line that I drew, and just using my rotary cutter to cut these in half. You're more than welcome to use a pair of scissors to cut them. You don't have to use a rotary cutter, but I just figure that a rotary cutter is a little bit easier to just go straight down there than it is to sit there with scissors and cut. Again, personal preference for how you prefer to get that done. There's no wrong way. The quilt police are not going to come for you because you're choosing to use a rotary cutter or scissors. Good evening. What book was I referencing? So this book is from the Fat Quarter Shop. The link is in my bio. And it is called the Jolly Bar Book Volume 5. So this is the one I'm using. This book is produced especially for the Fat Quarter Shop. The Jolly Bars are specific to the Fat Quarter Shop, but you don't have to use them when you are creating your quilt. You may have to do some math to think about what kind of yardage you need or what kind of scraps you'll need, depending on the type of quilt you're making if you're not using a Jolly Bar, because they make it specifically for those measurements, but you can figure it out. Trust me, it's not that difficult to think about what it is. A Jolly Bar is half of a layer cake, so this is 5 inches, and that's about the size of this book, by 10 inches. So Jolly Bar packs come like this. Again, Jolly Bars are pre-cuts. They're specific to the Fat Quarter Shop, and we use and you can get the Jolly Bars in a lot of different collections. So this one here is Denim and Daisies, and it's a combination of blues and oranges and white that I am using for this particular quilt. Okay, so we have these pre-cut. I tend to like to do them in bulk to get them out of the way. So once these are done, these are done. What we're going to do is press these, and then we are going to set them aside, excuse me, and we're going to work on our 4 patches. We're going to, I need water. We are going to press them. We're going to square them up. We're going to set them aside. I can open up my seams, and again, this is personal preference, so you are not bound to doing it this way. That's not a problem. So you can open your seams or you can press them to one side. The only thing that I say is to be consistent. Hi, Tiny Spool and Company. How are you? If anyone is interested in the Tiny Spool and Company, they sell, they do have other pre-cuts, but I learned about them when I got a couple jelly rolls from them. I got them from Amazon, but they were really great. I have 2 different quilts that I made from them. One was a jelly roll race, and the other one, I don't even remember what the name is. I'm sitting here looking at it. I still need to quilt it, but they're both blue. So I love the colors in their jelly rolls, and I just, I really think that they, came out great. And the great thing is that they were not super expensive. Thank you. So if you know me, you know I like to support small businesses, even though, we are getting it from Amazon. But I do support small businesses. I do like to do that. So I do buy a lot of my fabric from quilt shops, opposed to the big box stores. Not a problem. And again, Tiny Spool is linked. In my bio, it's a link for the Amazon, but follow them, make sure you're following them online, and like I said, you'll see a lot of cute jelly rolls, but like I said, they are starting the other pre-cuts. I need to buy some more fabric, like I need a hole in my head, so I need to show some restraint from buying some fabric right now, even though that still hasn't stopped me, but they do have other pre-cuts as well. Mary Mermaid is okay. Hey, Miss Shannon, how are you doing, darling? And I know you would know. So Miss Shannon does a lot of jelly roll rugs. So, I'm so sure that she would know about the different jelly rolls because, she does a lot of the pre-cuts. Oh, look, I could understand. You ain't got to explain nothing to me. I can find it on Amazon. I am not mad at you. It is not a problem. Just, like I said, the only reason why, because I'm supporting you, but I'm supporting you through Amazon. And that's fine, because I'm right there. Amazon is like they know my house. The cars just automatically drive right to the space. Yeah, she's ordering again. That's why I need to be on punishment from that. Okay. And so we have a lot of great quilters, and we have a lot of great people who use a lot of pre-cuts when they sew. But again, you're not married to the pre-cut. So you can absolutely, again, use yardage. Depending on the size of the pre-cut, you could start with a fat quarter. And then from the fat quarter, you could, get strips out of them. So again, you're not married to, I must have a jelly roll. There are some looks that look better with it. There's some simplicity to it because they're longer. They're already done. It's like I tell people it's like going to 7-Eleven or Wawa or Buc-ee's or any other places, Royal Farms, places that you may have where you stop for convenience and you're paying for convenience. So that candy bar that would cost you, maybe $2 in the corner store, it's going to cost you maybe 3 at the convenience place because you're paying to be convenienced. And so it's the same way with pre-cuts. A lot of times you're paying because somebody else pre-cut them for you. They went ahead and cut that fabric down into 2.5-inch strips. They cut it and they did it on a machine, many of them, but they cut them just as nicely and perfect for you. They saved you some time and energy, especially if you don't want to cut all those strips. There are some pre-cuts you would have to buy because you're not going to go into the quilt shop and ask for 40 2.5-inch strips and think that most quilt shops, the majority of the quilt shops, are going to cut those out for you. They're not, because that's a lot of work and a lot of manpower. So at most they might cut a fat quarter, but beyond that, yeah, don't even ask. Okay. Knew I had 2 rulers around here. Thank you for 1.4K likes. So here are all of my, hey RV, here are all of my half square triangles. They are already pressed and now they are open. So we are going to take these corners, just for quilters reference. They are called dog ears. Think about it like this is the dog's head and they're the ears. Okay, but anyway, so again, you can press these open. You can press to the dark side. Is typically what we call that. A lot of times when I'm working with half square triangles, there's a lot of bulk that comes to the corner. If I press it open, it distributes the bulk. It distributes the weight of the fabric to both sides. So if I press it all to the dark side, then I have this edge that's on this side plus this edge plus this fabric. So that's 3 layers on one side. And then if they all meet and I got layer beyond layer beyond layer, I may have like 6 to 12 layers all on one side. And I want to try to avoid that. So that's why it's sometimes better to open them up. It's not always possible. And then sometimes it's easier to press them to one side and then open up some seams. So you may find yourself doing a variety of things. Once we get everything pressed, and that pressing is key because we want to make sure that everything is nice and flat so that we get a good final measurement. We then want to take our ruler, and if we're lucky, that square ruler has a diagonal line, and we can line that diagonal line up with our block. And let's start with the 1s instead of with the 9s. And we can line that block up to be right where we need it to be according to the measurements. We're going to keep right with that diagonal piece. I want to make sure that I am not going over my measurement and that I am on the diagonal. And I'm just going to shave off that little bit extra. I'm going to make sure I have a great point, and then I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees. So that means now the point is in here. This time I want to make sure that I have the final measurement, what they're asking me to do in order to complete this block, and then shave off any extra I have on that side. And we'll work through these a little bit quicker, but I have a nice clean block. So we just need, how many did we do? 2 per each one, so we have 8, so we have 7 more to go. So we will finish up these 7. Hey Nina, how are you doing this evening? So again, when I am squaring the half square triangles up, my goal is to line everything up, but to make sure that on the first cut, if I have any spillage, I want it in here, and then I will trim it up to size after I turn it. And the reason why I want to do that is because if the block is a little short, let's say it calls for you to trim it to a 5-inch block. If it is a little short of 5 inches, then you want to get it as close as you possibly can, shaving off as little as you possibly can, so that block will stay as true to the 5 inches as you possibly can get it. And you should have like minimal scrap. You should not have a lot of scrap. If you do, either the pattern itself called for a really big block to be squared down. We sometimes say square up. Or, you know, you didn't pay attention to your measurements. So a rule in quilting is to measure twice and cut once. So that's why it's important for me to be paying attention to what I'm doing, or have extra fabric on hand for the mistakes. Because if I don't get it right the first time, and I measure it and cut it too small, then I need to start all over again. If I measure it and cut it too big, it's not a problem because I can still cut it down. So you can always cut it down. There's nothing you can do if you cut it too short. And again, I'm going to have a little extra room for pulling stuff off of this because I did a scant 1/4 inch. So it gave me a little bit more room because I'd rather err on the side of a little bit bigger than to err on the side of a little smaller, because I know me. I know that when I'm doing something, I may not be paying attention exactly to the seam, and that seam may go, even with the 1/4 inch foot, it may go a little off to the left or the right. And I know that I either have to measure it, and then I may have to rip it out and do it again, or just get 2 new pieces of fabric in order to make it work. If you're using pre-cuts, or if in some cases the measurements of a kit or whatever you bought are close to size, the problem is that you might not have extra fabric. So case in point, I'm working on a quilt that someone gave me, and I have one more piece that I need. And because it wasn't my fabric to begin with, I don't have enough fabric for another block. Now that's, you know, a little different from the standard product, but if I had her extra fabric, I could have gone in and redid some of those blocks. So I need to think a little bit differently, like, how am I going to fix this? And I don't have the fabric. So if it's still in print, if it's recent fabric, I'm just go to the fabric store and get some more fabric. Or maybe I can order, you know, a piece online and have it delivered to the house, if I can find the fabric. But sometimes it's fabric from somebody's stash, it's fabric from your stash, and you don't necessarily have the, how are you doing, Pat? How are you? Welcome in. Sometimes you don't always have that, you know, privilege to be able to just run out and get what you need, because the fabric in your stash may have been in your stash for a while. So I have a ton of fabric that I absolutely love, could never figure out what I wanted to do with it. And as a result, when I finally decided to use it, there's no extra anywhere, unless I happen to go on one of my social media groups for other quilters, hope that it was a popular fabric. And then if I ask, hey, does anyone have a piece of fabric this size, you know, from this line, maybe I'll get lucky and somebody has it and is willing to gift and or send it to me. And of course, you know, I'm not always looking for the gift. I will pay for the fabric, but, you know, sometimes people are like, look, just get it out my stash. I'm not using it. And, you know, then there are also times when I have things in my stash that I will absolutely look at and I will say, you know, you could have this, because I'm not doing anything with it. Okay, so we have this one and then one more to go. Again, I am taking my ruler with this diagonal line and I'm lining it up with the half square triangle. So taking my time, and again, like this is key, right? A lot of times people will say, well, quilts are so hard to make. They're not hard to make, but there is some precision with this. And so, you know, exact measurements or close to exact measurements make the difference when you are creating a quilt, because it will make you will have waves, some of your points will be off, other things could happen as a result of your measurements not being what they're supposed to be. So you want to make sure that as best as possible, you can get those measurements to be spot on so that you get your points and your corners. If it's a little off, the world will still go on. But just know that it's going to alter the look of it. And if you're particular, then you may want to fix it. If you're not particular, you may say you want to leave it. My attitude is, unless it's in a quilt show or unless it is terribly off, I'm not worried about it. So we finished all the blocks, and this is all the scrap we have. Okay, so all of my half square triangles are done. I could set those aside, and let's move up our next set of blocks. We are going to make a nine patch, Lord. We are going to make a 4 patch. And that is one of the things that I keep talking about with this quilt sampler, is that there were a lot of 4 patches in here. Now, when I cut this fabric, I cut it right sides together. This print that I am using for the background has little dots on it, so it is considered like a off-white on white. And because it is white on white, what I'm doing, and I got a little tool that somebody suggested, I haven't used it yet because it would be too much like right to do that. I'm looking for the right side and I'm just facing that up. So I'm separating these into piles of 4. Really, it should be piles of 8. And even if it's not exact, as long as all of my fabric is facing up, because I'm going to put right sides together. And I will say this, unless your fabric, the design is really pronounced on it, you could actually do the wrong side of the fabric and no one would know the difference. And the only reason why you would know is because you put it on the wrong side and you're like, oh shoot, I messed that up. But a lot of times I will leave it just like it is because nobody's going to notice it. Okay. So now these are going to go like that. And I'm going to stack them like this because I'm going to chain piece these. So I will have a background next to a print. And so all I'm doing is just taking the prints and putting them in 2 different piles with the right sides faced up. So all right sides are faced up. And this is not going to be scrappy, so we're not going for a look like that. We're just going for a look like this. Christy, thank you. Thank you, darling. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the Jolly Christmas. So we have... Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So we have this. I'm going to pull this apart just a little bit. And what we are going to do... Thank you. So thank you for getting your daily heart me through me as well. What we're going to do is do a 4-patch. 4 patches are 1, 2, 3, 4 patches. And I take mine after I lay them out the way that they're going to go, and then I will flip each one top to bottom and then stitch, and I'm going to chain stitch these all the way out. So I take top and then the bottom, and then I'm going to chain stitch these out, and then I'll do the next top and the next bottom until they are all stitched. Now there is an easier way to kind of save a little bit of time on this, but I'm just doing it the way that the pattern is. And again, I need to pay attention to what I'm doing, because if I do this right, everything is going to be lined up the way that I need it to be lined up. And what I mean by that is I don't need to take all the tops and do them, and then all the bottoms and do them. I'm doing them in order so that they stay in order. And then that way, when I go to create the 4-patch unit, I will have all the colors the way that I want them to be. Now, again, I know I have 2 of each. And really, they are the same thing. But I do like to put them out I like to get in the habit of doing things, because I really could have taken this, turned this, and then just did 1 row and sewed them all the way through. I like to do them this way because sometimes when it is scrappy and I don't want certain colors to touch, then I'm in the habit of something. And a habit helps you to move a little bit faster than, doing something, different each time. So this process goes a lot faster for me because I'm used to doing it this way. So I just have to get in there with these dry fingers and separate them. I'm new to quilting. I completed my 2nd quilt. Oh my goodness. Congratulations. So getting it to your quilter means that you are not going to do the quilting yourself, but you are probably sending it out to a long armor, and that is absolutely fabulous. When I first started quilting, I did my own quilting on this machine. So this is my Husqvarna Viking Emerald 116, and I did a lot of the quilting on this machine. I just I didn't want to spend the money. I'm not going to say I didn't have it. I did, because I was buying other things. But I didn't want to spend the money to have somebody else quilt it when I felt like I could do that myself. So I did my own quilting, and then we went to a quilt shop where I learned how to use their long arm, and so I rented their long arm, and then I would come in and still do my own quilting on some of the bigger quilts, opposed to me doing it on my domestic. So you can absolutely ask me how I know. You can absolutely do all of your quilting on a domestic, and it could come out absolutely fabulous. And you will have the biggest headache in the world, but it can be done. Or you can either, rent a long arm, or you can send it to a long armor. And so whichever way works for you. And like I said, convenience is key, right? If you don't want to take all of that time, if you say, well, I don't want to mess it up, and you want to send it to a long armor, like I said, knock yourself out. You can absolutely send it to a long armor and get it done. I think that, the prices are kind of around the same. And I don't have any issues with the prices for a long armor. So I think that they are absolutely perfect. Thank you everyone for coming in and joining us. We are working on the XO quilt block that is part of the Jolly Bar sampler, the Jolly Bar 5 sampler quilt. We are on the last block. And so some of the sampler quilt alongs that you may do may take months to get it done. And it's not because it's a hard quilt. It's because the sew along requires us to make a block every week, every 2 weeks, every month. It depends on how the sew along is set up, or every day if you have a quick sew along. So, you know, it just depends on it. This one was every other week. And so here is the book, the Jolly Bar 5. It's a Jolly Bar book, the Jolly Bar book, volume 5. And this is exclusive to the Fat Quarter Shop. Link is in my bio. There are 20 Jolly Bar quilts in here. Again, they are all block specific. So you are making one block. Whoops. You are making one block. We have made all of the blocks. You will see that I recorded next to each block when the date was for the ones that I made. And so, you know, we are now all the way down here to the XOXO quilt block. So this is where we are here. What each one of these does is it allows us to make one block if we choose, and that's how we're doing the sampler. Or, let me get to the right page. We can make the blocks. And so in this case, we have the X's and we have the O's, like tic-tac-toe, right? So we have the X's and we have the O's, and we can make the whole quilt if that's what we want. So if we like this look, when I finish this today, I could say I'm making 8 more blocks and I will make this quilt. So it's totally up to you whether you want to make the quilt or if you just want to make the block and put them together to make a more eclectic type look. Awesome. So yeah, I would, like I said, I would definitely check it out. There are a lot of good patterns on the Fat Quarter Shop's website. I worked on 2 this weekend. I worked on, there were 2 free patterns that I worked on this weekend. And so I'm looking at them, right? And one of them was the, okay. That's a shame that I can't remember the name of it. I'm looking at them. I'll come to that in a minute because I am like drawing a blank and I'm looking at it and it's upside down. So I have 2 quilts that I worked on this weekend, and one of them is the layer cake lolly and the other one is the layer cake lemonade. I don't even know why I didn't start with layer cake because that's what was going to trigger my mind to remember what they were called. So I worked on those. They were 2 free patterns and I used layer cakes that I had already in my stash. So everything is chained together. I love chain piecing because if I stop in the middle of the project and I go to bed, everything is together. And yes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these in pairs because I cut these in order and I know that I am doing 4 patches. I put these together already in 2s, so 2 and 2 is 4, and if I cut these correctly, I have my 2s together. And then when I go to lay these out or open these up, I should have them back in the same 4 patch. So they're separate right now, but notice that they still land in a 4 patch. That's why I like sewing them in those units like that, because then I can look and check and make sure everything is right before I do the next part. Again, you're gonna make a choice. Do you want your seams, like most quilters will traditionally do, and press to the dark side? And if you do that, your seams will nest. and they'll lock in together, or do you want to press them open? That's up to you. When we do this, we usually, there are some people that do it, we usually don't backstitch. So be careful when you are working with your blocks that you are not tugging real hard on them, because the seams are weak and they will come undone. And then you will have to run over them with your needle and thread again, just to get them to lock back in. Now, if this was on enough, it'll automatically be hot enough to do what I need it to do. Okay. Sometimes it'll curl back up on itself, and I may just need to open it up. I try very hard when I am ironing, when I am using my iron, not to iron. I try very hard to press, because I don't want to disturb the fabric. Because if I disturb the fabric, I may kind of, it's a weaved pattern. So any bit of pulling and tugging may cause it to warp out of its original shape a little bit, and it may cause some wiggles and things in your quilt design. It won't be real noticeable, but it just may be off. And in some cases, it may be off enough where it creates a little bit of wave and you may feel some kind of way about it. Is there a way to kind of correct that? Absolutely. It just, requires a little more thinking and looking. So I'm just pressing these open and then just laying them down one on top of the other. And again, this is up to you. Did I press those others open? Yeah. So this is up to you. Again, I'm choosing to press these open. You can choose to press them to one side. If you are pressing them to one side, the rule of thumb, not the standard, but the rule of thumb is to press to the dark side. And the logic behind pressing to the dark side is that your fabric is light. The white fabric is light. So when you go to lay this on the batting, you're going to see that seam edge pop through that white a little bit. And you may not want that. And it's okay if it does. It's not the end of the world. But one of the things that I like to do is make sure that it's consistent. So if it's popping through on this set, I want them to pop through on that set. And then that way, at least it looks uniform if somebody's looking at it, opposed to it looking wonky. Like I can see the seam in this white, but I can't see the seam in this white. And in some cases, if you press to the light, to the dark side, it's going to be a time when you're going to be forced to press to the light. But again, it'll be uniform. So even if it's some, it'll be some of the same some. I usually try to use, this is a liso iron. I do, so the feet like to pop up from time to time when the iron gets hot. I've turned the feet off so that they kind of stay in. Sometimes the iron will remind me that I had it down too long on my ironing board when I'm pressing, and that's when you'll hear those feet struggling to come up. And that's like a safety feature, which I love, because even if I turn this off, my iron is like, yo, you left me down too long. And I need you to have somewhere to live, honey. So I'm going to put them feet up so that you don't, have any destruction to your house. So again, just pressing. I'm not ironing. There is a difference between ironing and pressing. Do we use them interchangeably from time to time? Absolutely. I will absolutely say I'm going to take my pieces over to the machine and iron them. And really, I'm not ironing them, I am pressing them. I may say, I'm going to go upstairs and press my dress. And I'm not pressing the dress. I'm actually going to go upstairs sometimes and iron the dress. In the cleaners, they might not iron because they have a big machine. And so they lay everything out. And then on that machine, when they cover the top, they are pressing your fabric, your jeans or your pants or your shirt. So they might not be ironing your shirt. They may very well be pressing it. But again, even with your shirts, they don't want your shirts a lot of times, especially men's shirts, are cotton. And when you're pressing them or ironing them, sometimes you will distort that fabric as well. So it helps it to be uniform and crisp. And so they prefer to press it than to iron it. So like I said, I'm just holding the iron. I don't have a lot of space. Now, sometimes I'll move it a little bit just to, get the juices going. I do not use water a lot of times. I will keep the iron dry. So there is some condensation in the iron just because there's some heat. And we know that sometimes heat will produce condensation just because the inside of the machine may start to sweat. But that's not me with water in here. Now, do I put water in the iron? Absolutely. Because I will come downstairs in the morning, and if there's a certain shirt that I want to wear that I did not bring upstairs to iron on the big ironing board, absolutely, I'm not walking back upstairs when I have an iron down here on the first floor. So sometimes there will be water in it, but I usually don't do it with the quilt. Okay, so here we go. Everything is together. 4 patches all look the way they're supposed to look. Now, remember, we went this way to put those units together in pairs. Now we're going to go this way to put all 4 together so that we create the 4 patch. I want to make sure that I line my seams up. And if they're a little off, I want to pay attention to that, because I can get it straight if I can pay attention to it when I stitch it together. As long as I can get it within that 1/4 inch. If I can't get it within that 1/4 inch, then I need to do some seam ripping or fudging. Again, you can choose to backstitch at the beginning of every unit. Not everybody backstitches. Sometimes we get that loop stuck in our foot. Not everybody backstitches. If you choose not to backstitch at the front and the end, just know that you don't need to pull your fabric hard, because those seams will come out. We're matching up the seams if you so choose. These are small, but just for the sake of argument, I can clip them, take them to my machine. Oh, I forgot the backstitch on that one, that's okay. When I get to the seam, I can remove the clip. So if you feel like you can hold it with your fingers, you can hold it with your fingers. If you feel like you're just better off lining up the seams and then clipping it, clip away. You can absolutely do these one by one, like I'm doing right now. Or you can clip them all and then run them through your machine. Again, this is up to you. Which way you choose to do this. And I just prefer to flip and clip. If I clip, line everything up. I did not square up these units, so if they're a little off, I will square them up once I get them into the 4 patch. Some people square up all along the way, some people don't. Just know that there's a chance for it to be a little off the less squaring you do. The more squaring you do, the more likely it is to be exact. And it doesn't mean that you're going to mess something up at the end. It just means that it, you know, maybe a little off. And again, I think that adds character. I don't think that that's a rippable moment. I will rip apart a quilt if I look at it and I'm like, that doesn't look right and I need to adjust. So I made a quilt on Sunday, and when I went back and looked at it, I was like, these blocks aren't right. And so I had to pull out a row or two, which was fine because the blocks were big enough and I didn't mind doing it to get everything to line up the way that I needed it to line up. Hello, hello. How are you doing? Hello, hello. And we are down to the last two. And again, we're making sure that those seams line up. And we start at the seam, not at the end of the fabric. If we start at the end of the fabric and they're not even, it's almost going to guarantee you that your seams will not line up. So I'm making sure that I line the seams up first. And if the edges are off, I'm not worried about that, because I can square those up later and I'll make sure that they fit at that time. And like I said, sometimes it doesn't matter what I do. It might be a little off. And if it's not too far off, to me it just adds character. Okay, so we had 2 colors each for, whoops, 4, so we have 4 patches right now. We're going to end up with 4 units. So we're going to have a blue unit, a light blue unit, a dark blue unit, a light orange unit, and a dark orange unit, or burnt orange if you want to call it that. Okay. So we have our 8 units here. And if we open that, it should just about line up in that center. I can see that it's a little off on that one. And like I said, if it's a little off, I'm not worried about it. The first one, I didn't use a clip. The second one, I think I did. So, but they're not off to the point where I'm looking at it and I'm saying they don't line up. If I were looking at them and saying, you know what, I really messed that up, they are not lined up in that center, those corners are not all nice and clean, then I would just rip that one out and try again. So a great thing to do is to go through each one and just look at them before you start the next thing. Are you happy with what you see? If you're happy with what you see, let's press them, let's square these up, and let's get these done. And I'll show you, here's one where I remember I pressed these open when this was running through the machine. It pushed the seam back. So the seam is a little twisted, but I will just press that down. Hey, Coco Drop, I will press that down. Thank you for the heart, me. I will press that down and it'll be fine. But you don't want a whole lot of seams twisted because it creates some bulk on this side and not bulk on this side, but we'll be okay. So we'll open this up. How did the wine bag go? I came home and crashed. I was like, yeah, this couldn't happen tonight. So I pressed this open, and like I said, see how my feet sometimes want, like they have a mind of their own. And some of it may be because there's a sensor right here. And this is about 10 years old. So, you know, this may be seeing its last little bit of breath. Okay. And we'll just press that open and set that aside. 7 more to go. I was so mad at myself because I said I need to make some. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get on. That was what I said in my mind. And then I got home and was like I worked real hard today because I was at a professional development. But I was like, oh, I need a nap. So I ate dinner and then I took a nap. And again, you just want to press it. So I could spin my seams, and that's if I were pressing to one side, but because I'm pressing open, there's no spinning of the seam. So if you are used to quilting, we can get in there and just kind of spin that corner. But the way this is set up, I don't have to do that. That corner is going to lay flatly for me when I go to quilt it, and all of the fabric is distributed evenly. Okay, so again, for anyone just coming in, we are working on the XOXO quilt block, and this is one of the quilt block patterns from the Jolly Bar 5, the Jolly Bar book, volume 5. And this is the Jolly Bar 5 quilt along, sponsored by the Fat Quarter Shop. And we are finally on the last block. So in 2 weeks, I will be putting this puppy together. Now I may do some pre-prep work up until that, depending on how much is going to be needed to put the whole thing together. But what I love is that this is falling exactly on the winter break for me, which means that I can either do it earlier on the Tuesday, around 7-ish, and then just get the whole thing finished on live, or I can do some pre-prep work leading up to it. So for the quilt along for Fat Quarter Shop, I need to be able to get this done by and posted on the days that it's supposed to be posted on. So I only have to get the quilt block done. I don't have to have the whole quilt done. But since I'm off, I may do the whole quilt. Oh, thank you for becoming the title gifter, Christy. Thank you. I think on a couple lives I've done that, but I've never seen that little icon for that. Okay. And we're just going to press, and we have one more. And then we're going to square these up just a little bit to make sure everything is nice and even. And again, you can be somewhat forgiving in these blocks, which means that if they're not exactly 1/4 of an inch, you're not going to get away. Like 1/8 of an inch is about as low, like you could do a 16, but you're pushing it. So 1/8 of an inch is about as low as you can go if, you know, your blocks are a little off. But if you've kept with the measurements that the person who created the quilt block gave for you, you should not be that far off, unless your seams are off. You take, again, their measurements. This time we do not need to use that diagonal. We're just using straight lines. We're going to make sure that be nice if I turn the ruler around to the ones. We're making sure everything lines up the way that we need it to, and we're making sure that our measurements are where they're supposed to be. And this looks just about right. So there's not going to be too much that I'm going to do here, because this looks to be exact. So there's not much trimming off that I'm going to do. And again, this was more exact. When I did the half square triangles, they weren't exact. Let me check my layout, make sure I do this right, because somebody will mess up a layout in a minute. These need to be trimmed. Let me set these right here. And let me put the layout there. Okay. Almost reminds me of a Jacob's ladder. So if you are used to quilting and you know anything about quilt blocks, the Jacob's ladder will look something like this. But again, I am doing 2 corners, 2 edges. So I am measuring everything, making sure it lines up the way that it needs to line up. There should not be a whole lot that I need to shave off. And then I'm going to lay that out the way that it needs to go. And remember, we talked about this being a 4 patch. Hey, Loria. So because we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I now place them all together, I can sew them together like a 4 patch. But this is how one of the units is going to look. And so then we can lay out the second color, and then we can trim these up to go along with that. And we'll do the same thing for the other 3 until we have everything laid out, so that we can begin stitching everything together and finishing up this block. This block is really wonky for me. I don't know what I did here. So this is the one that I do need to pay attention to a little bit differently, which is fine. But I'm making sure that my measurements are where they are supposed to be. I'm making sure my measurements are where they are supposed to be for this block. And if I see any wonkiness, which is what I do see, I want to make sure that I am straightening that up. And this is like really off. I don't know why. And that's okay, because I can straighten it up. But I want to make sure that I have the measurement that it is supposed to be all the way around, and that my lines are going straight across and straight up and down. So I do want to keep that true as possible. And I really shouldn't be taking much off. So and both of now the diagonal should go through both of these squares. So I am taking the time to look at that. And again, we said measure twice, cut once. So because I'm measuring once, measuring twice, and cutting once, like I am paying attention to certain things, and that's why I'm also like not running my mouth during certain parts, because I want to make sure that I get that accurate. And you know how some people can't walk and chew gum at the same time? Sometimes I can't talk and cut at the same time. Okay, so we are on color number 3. And again, if they are a little off, it's okay because I'm going to trim it. And if I can help it, as long as I can get it within at least giving me 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, I can make it work. If I have less than that, I need to figure something out. And if something looks really off, then I need to figure that out as well. Okay. I don't even know why I did it that way. So we have one more, but again, just looking to make sure that everything is lined up. And again, if I was a little wonky or a little off, I'm going to catch those. And then when I work on the seams, I will correct those. And again, if you look on your mat or your ruler and you're looking at 1/8 of an inch, not much room. And cotton frays. So because cotton frays, you really don't want to have a small seam, because over time, people are going to pull at the fabric. I don't care if it's a quilt or not, and it's quilted down, they're going to pull at the fabric, and those seams may come undone. So that's why you at least want the 1/4 of an inch, and you're trying not to have less than that, because you don't want to give somebody something or sell somebody something that's going to fray, or that's going to come undone after a couple washes and wears. Okay, so that will be the 3rd block. And then we have one more block. And again, we're going to chain stitch these together. We're going to press those. And then after we press them, we'll put all 4 units together and it'll be done. But I'd rather, again, size up along the way than to wait till the end. Because if these were off, my final blocks, if the units are off, my final blocks are going to be off. And if my final blocks are way off, then I'm going to have to figure out how to add borders, redo them, take them apart, alter the quilt. You know, I'm going to have to do something to compensate for the fact that everything was a little off. Did I? 1, 2, and again, just making sure that I read everything for this final one, because I will tell you what will happen for me. I will get down to the last block, and when I get down to the last block, that's when I start getting lazy and tired. And if you want to talk about that one being the one that's going to be wrong, it's going to be that one. Because I'm probably not paying attention to what I'm doing. And that's when I make the mistakes. Okay, and that's the final look for the final block. 4 patch, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what do? Flip over onto the other side. And again, you can flip it this way if that's what you prefer. I just prefer to flip it out. Keep them in the same order. So we'll do top, then bottom. Because we did these the way that they needed to be done, they should line up. Again, remember, if you were doing any sort of squaring up, your seams may be a little weak. So don't do a lot of pulling of your blocks, of these units, because those seams may start to come apart on you. So just be careful that you're not overly manhandling them, because you don't want to pull those seams apart. So sometimes I'm not paying attention and I will manhandle them a little bit, and then when I look at the quilt, I have holes, and I will just whip stitch it, but you don't want the holes if you can help it. They're not going to be big holes. I might be able to quilt over those holes to close them up, but if you can help it, you don't want the holes. So we're just doing one top, one bottom. We're keeping all the colors the same, in the same order, but again, you may scrap this, and it may be completely scrappy. And if you choose to backstitch at the front and the back, that's fine too. If you backstitch, then you won't have as many seams separating, and you just have to remember to do it. It's not the end of the world if you don't, but you're also, if you're trimming your blocks up, in some cases, you may be backstitching and then trimming those blocks up and then cutting off the part that you backstitch. So it still may come undone. And this part again comes so quickly just because we have everything already laid out. Everything is trimmed up, so it just goes under our needle very quickly. Hey, Miss Charmaine, how are you doing, darling? Are you getting excited for the countdown? This time next week, girl. This time next week. I don't even know why I'm talking like that, because I don't count down, but I get in the spirit for other people. Hey, Sabs, how are you doing, darling? Pop, 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 last two. And these blocks aren't bad. So when you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, it took her an hour and a half or 2 hours to do a block, that's too long. Remember, I'm talking, I'm explaining. It would not take me this long to make these blocks if I were sitting in silence, listening to music, or, well, it might take that long if I'm watching TV and the TV show is good. But for the most part, you know, it wouldn't take that long. I'm cutting the twos by twos again. I'm doing fine. This is called, so the block itself is called, it's the XOXO quilt. And so we're doing the X, and then changing direction is the O. So this is the block that we're working on. So we're not doing the whole quilt, we're only doing a block. Let's press these and then get these sewn together. We're just making a sample of each block, of 10 of the blocks, of the 20 blocks. And then we are putting those together all in a quilt that I will be working on in 2 weeks. And I will be figuring out the math and the time for that, because I believe the center of the block, the biggest block, is the one that needs to get bordered. And I think the rest of the blocks kind of all fit together. We'll find out. So I will be playing around with that over the next week, and then deciding like what prep I need to do. And then I will be going live in 2 weeks to put the whole quilt top together. And it's a pretty decent sized quilt top. So I've been posting all of the directions, and you can also find them on the Fat Quarter Shop under the Jolly Bar 5 quilt along. So there are some quilt alongs coming up for the spring. We are making decisions now in terms of which ones we want to participate in. I'm like half fabric will quilt. Thank you for tapping the screen for 6.8K likes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you. I thank everybody who has been hanging out with me as we are getting ready to come to the close of finishing this quilt block. So we are just pressing those seams open. I will take this block up to my big ironing board once it's finished, and all these little seams that want to keep opening up on me, at that time I will just give them a good press on that, and I will make sure that if I have to add a little spray starch just to keep them in place, I will do that at that time. But I just want these to lay flat enough for me to do what I need to do. 2 colors down, 2 to go. Again, I can press these seams open, or I can press them to one side. And that's a common question that is asked, and it is personal preference. So there are people who will absolutely tell you that they only press open, and this is why. And there are people who will absolutely tell you that they only press them to one side, and they don't like to press them open, and this is why. And I say, do you, boo. I do listen to the arguments because I think that I want to make an informed decision. And so I need to understand what the rationale is between open and close. And my understanding for open and close is that open, what open does is open means that if you are stitching in the ditch, you will probably break the thread seams. And if you do that, there's a possibility for there to be holes in your quilts. Because people are using long arms now and they are stitching all over the quilt and not necessarily in the ditch, then they can open the seams because you're not necessarily going to catch it loosely in the ditch. When I use spray starch, so let me tell you, I did an experiment and I felt like it didn't make a difference. I found a new product that I had not used before called Flatter. I love the smell of Flatter. I felt like it did the same thing as Best Press. So Best Press is normally what I use. And depending on what it is, I will also use regular spray starch that you can get from Walmart, which is flawless. So I will use canned spray starch. If I use Best Press or any of the other liquids, then I do like using this. This was a game changer for me to put it in a mister. And then when I use the mister, it mists all over it, so it doesn't saturate the fabric and cause it to shrink as much. So you're just misting to help get that starch down. And some people, because starch is not cheap, they will absolutely water it down a little bit because they don't need to do like a thick, heavy starch. You just want to be able to manipulate your fabric and help it to lay flat. Hey, Shells. I don't mind so much. I won't say it's my favorite process in the quilting, but it doesn't bother me to press it. I think it's a tedious step, right? That if I can avoid certain parts of it, I will. For the purpose of the live, I'm going to do it the right way because I don't want to show somebody my pitiful habits. So I'm going to show you the way that it's supposed to be done, and then I'm going to let you do you, boo. Okay, not a problem. So again, these are 2 units together. I didn't clip that chain. I'm folded on itself, and remember, what do? We line up the seams. The center seam is the only seam for this that needs to be lined up. And I'll clip it. This seam here, there's no match on this side. So it doesn't have to be lined up with anything. So now I can just go to that edge. And if I want to, I can clip. Make sure I have that side flat on that side. If you feel some kind of way, you can clip here. You can line this side up if you prefer. Just gonna show you, you know, what some people do that I don't do. And then I can clip this one, right? So I can have all these clips. Y'all know I don't do all them clips. I'm just showing you what you could do. So then I can take it to the machine with the clips. Because, again, I'm getting to these bigger pieces, I am gonna backstitch. What the clips are allowing me to do is to ensure that my seams stay flat. Does that guarantee it? No. But it's going to liken the probability of them staying flat. They still might twist on you a little bit, so you may need to get under there and check. And that's another reason why you don't want to just zip and speed right through your project. You want those seams to be as flat as you can possibly get them. You could get a pointer to help you out at this point. Or you could use your fingernail. Okay, we have 3 more to go. We're going to press these open again, and then we're going to stitch all these units together, and we're going to be finished. Again, I'm going to clip that center. And partially because the block is getting bigger, and it's easier to clip that center, because then I can let go of it, position everything else. Remember, I don't want to do a lot of pulling because that seam may come apart. Let's get that there. Okay, 2 more to go. This is the time again. Take your time. Get those seams lined up. And this is why, like, I think the quilt that I did on Sunday was a good palette cleanser. So the Layer Cake Lemonade quilt didn't have any seams that lined up. So because none of the seams lined up, I could just zip, 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 zip quilt. And it's fun to sometimes have something that you don't have to think about. Because the next quilt that I'm getting ready to do, the next big quilt, I'm doing a pattern test, and I like stars. I always did. But with points and everything else, I have to think. And so when like that one, I'm going to do slowly and put down and think about it, like, just because I want to make sure everything lines up. So I do want it, even if it's a pattern test, I do want everything to come out the way that it's supposed to, because number one, I want to do the pattern designer proud, and number two, if I'm going to put all this work into it, it needs to come out the way that I want it to. New threads, how are you doing today? So we're again going to go in here, line up that final seam for this unit. And we'll call things units and blocks, and sometimes they can be interchangeable. When you are making a big block, the smaller parts of the block can be called units. Those units themselves may make up a mini block. So we can call it a block, but technically we would call it a unit. So these are units that I'm making to the bigger block. Is somebody going to come for me and fire me out of this space because I called it a block? No. But technically it is a unit, not a block, because it is part of the actual block that I'm making. The blocks make up the quilt. Hello, it's me. Just joined. Okay, too much time listening to stuff. We're gonna clip these apart because these units are all together. Two more times to the iron. This for this time, and then the final block. So this is the unit. I love how those points are pointing, so it looks awesome. And again, if they're a little off, I'm not worried about it. But if you feel some kind of way, get that seam ripper out. That's what seam rippers are for. I'm not going to feel some kind of way. And I don't know, like I said, if this were something that I were sewing for somebody else and getting paid for it, maybe I would be concerned about how pointy some things are. But the reality is depending on who I'm making it for, unless it's another quilter, they are not paying attention to how pointy those points are. The baby won't know. The baby mama won't care. Okay. Again, if you feel like using the mist, that's how light that is. And it just allows you to go over your fabric, and it helps to just press it, just to get those seams to press a little bit more. Now, of course, I'll be using a little bit more mist, but that was just an example. I could use my faultless. My faultless would make this a little bit more stiff, if you will. And then we have that. Okay, so let's get the other 4 done so we can finish this. Look, I'm serious. Look, you tell me a baby that knew, and I'm telling you, you got a genius. But that baby is not going to be looking at that quilt. And the mama who is, especially if it's a first-time mama, they're so happy to get the quilt from you that they're not looking that close either. So everyone who I've made a quilt for, they were happy. And I'm going to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10 when I made that quilt, they were last-minute quilts. If I go back and look at some of those quilts that I made for some of those baby mamas, I'll probably now find like 85,000 errors. I absolutely probably will. Considering like how long it took me to make it. Because I know that I worked on those at the last minute. I absolutely know that. But I also know, like, my nephew is 4. And so, I made him a quilt. He's not looking to see that his auntie's lines aren't straight. And his father, my brother, was he wouldn't be looking anyway. The mama might have looked, but my brother's not going to look at that. He's like, thank you, sis. So most people who I am making quilts for are not checking my work like that. Michaela, so pressing is important to sewing, no matter whether you're quilting or whether you are doing garments or anything else like that. Pressing helps to finish the look. So you don't want to have in your quilt or in your garment like these humps and bumps. And leaving this like this will give you humps and bumps. So you want your fabric to lay as flat as you possibly can. I could get away with leaving this like this and just taking my finger and pressing it and then giving it a good press at the end. But I feel like I work harder to do that. I also feel like when you're squaring up your blocks, if these blocks need to be a certain size, let's say 9 inches square, when I'm going to square them up, if they're not laying flat enough for me, then I may miscut them because they might kind of fold up on themselves a little bit. And then I may cut the block at 9 1/4 rather than 9 inches or 9 1/8. And that's going to impact the accuracy of it when I go to finish the quilt up. So pressing the seams flat, as flat as they'll go. Like I said, sometimes, like what really helps to make them lay flat is the starch and is the liquid, the water. That'll really help them to lay flat, but you don't want to distort your block either. So I want these to lay as flat as possible by pressing them. I want to make sure that those seams are as accurately flat as I can so I get the best square up as I possibly can. So if they don't lay as flat as I want them to, that would be nice if I move that. I could get this and just do a light mist over it. You don't need a lot. And that steam will help to really lay it flat, and the starch will help to stiffen it up a little bit. And basically my iron is kind of drying it as I'm pressing it, okay? So it gives it a much flatter feel. But I don't need a lot because I also don't want that cotton to shrink. But again, I can just little mist, and for as much as you can't hear it, is little bit of mist as I'm using. So I'm not using a lot because I don't need a lot. I need just enough to help it lay flat. So your spray starch really should last you if it's just for your piecing, because you don't need a lot. Now, if you prefer, you can starch the heck out of your fabric. It'll make it like paper if you do. And that'll give you even more accurate cuts on the front end. So there are quilters who will absolutely wash their fabric. You don't necessarily do that with a pre-cut because it'll fray a little bit more, but they will absolutely wash their fabric. They will take it to their ironing board. They will use a lot of starch, or they will saturate it with starch. They'll hang it up. They'll let it dry. They'll press it out, and their fabric will be really, really stiff. And that's okay, because when you wash it, a lot of that starch is going to come out. But what it does is it'll make it like paper just about. And then when you're cutting, you don't have to worry about the shifting and the moving and all that other stuff. Okay. For the XXOs, oh, wait a minute. You know what you forgot to do? You just square it up. Okay. Let me square this up real quick. So again, you're using your measurements that they've given you for your block. You're going to make sure that it is measured twice, cut once. It should be going through all of your squares, all of these squares right here, and then these squares right here. When you go to cut it, and it really shouldn't be a lot to cut off if everything was accurate. And the key word is if. Because if doesn't always work for me with it being accurate, and it may not work for everybody else with being accurate. So one block, and this is all I've cut off. And again, you can see, right, this is why it helps to iron this, because that block is laying nice and flat. And I'm hopefully, is never guaranteed, but I'm hoping that I get a little bit more precision as a result of ironing it and squaring it up. I may not have gotten that one. That might be a little bit more off than I wanted to. Okay. So I have two more to square up, and then we will sew all these together. And we will be done. Why does that look wonky? That looks wonky. Ooh, that looks wonky. And again, I take my time. That looks really wonky. I don't know. I mean, that's like crooked. Let me turn that a little bit. I need to see that one. Okay, I think I can make this work, even though that looks wonky. But I want to see it from this angle, which is why I turned it. Yeah. Don't tell me, oh, you did that little clip. How you're cutting, you're scaring me. Okay, so we straighten that out a little bit. I may have to fudge that a little bit. And then we have one more to do. Let's turn this ruler the right way. I do like to start with my ones in the same corner because I like to see my measurements the way that they are. Sometimes you will have rulers that will have the markings that you need for those particular blocks, or you might have a ruler. This is called a square ruler because it's square. You may have one that is specific for the block that you're working with. So if it calls for a 9.5 inch block, and this is a 9.5 inch square, then you would just be able to line this up with the square and then just cut all the way around. If the square is bigger than your block, then you just have to find the measurement for the block. Okay, here we go. So we're going to put this together in whatever order we need to put it in. So which way do I want to go? If I go this way, there we go. Can kind of see it better, right? So if I go this way, this is the X. If I turn these this way, this is the O. So I'm making the same blocks no matter I'm making the same blocks no matter the same units. Let me change that. I'm making the same units no matter which block. So it doesn't matter if it's this way for the O, because the pattern calls for some X's, some O's, or this way for the X. Once you finished all of them, if you made them real scrappy, like you did all the units, there are 9 blocks. 9 times 4 is 36. So 36, I would need 36 of these blocks, and then I can mix them up into X's and O's. Tell me why it's almost 11 o'clock and my principal is, okay, let me, like, it's texting me. I'm just going to put it out there. Front number one, she's not on social media. And even if she is, why are you texting me? She knows she's going to hear from me tomorrow. Okay, so here they are. Again, what does this look like? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a 4-patch. So what are we going to do? We're going to treat it like a 4-patch. I'm laying this out so my oranges are in separate corners. My blues are in separate corners. If I feel some kind of way, I could do this way, where the oranges together and the blues are together, but the darks are across from each other and the lights are across from each other. That's up to you. So this is your quilt. This is your final result to determine which way you want it to look. I preferred in my mind to have those like that, so that's the way I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to flip these over onto each other. We're going to stitch these 2 units together, and then we're going to stitch the 2 rows together, and we'll be done. Now, this one has a lot of seams that match up. So we are going to use clips to match up those seams. Remember, we did some squaring of this, so I do want to make sure that when I do this, I'm not pulling those seams when I'm stitching this, so I won't pull those seams apart. It's closed on me. So let me open that up. And again, I can go back and press these seams a little bit flatter if I need to, but for right now, they are fine. And we'll get that one there. Thank you for 7.8K likes. Thank you for tapping the screen for those of you that are still here. Hopefully we will get to 10,000 before I finish, which should not be too long. Okay, I'm gonna make sure everything is the way it's supposed to be, because I pulled it away and I do want to make sure that it's right because I can mix the order up. We'll take this back to our machine and we're gonna do those 2 lines, those 2 stitches. Again, because I'm at the end of the block, I am going to do a back stitch. I am just trying to make sure that I am not moving those seams. like it's okay. So again, we left these in the unit. We're going to open these up to make sure. Thank you for the follow. We're going to make sure that it is what it is, because sometimes we mix the orders up, especially if we're doing a lot of them. So we do want to make sure that everything is straight. We'll come back here and we're going to press those seams. As I've been saying all night, if those seams are getting pressed open, up to you. Okay. And like I said, I'll go back and then just kind of open up some of those other seams that mushed when I pressed it, and that's okay, because I do want to make sure that these seams lay nice and flat when I take it to the batting. I want everything to lay flat and not be twisted. Is it really gonna matter? No, but do I prefer for it to be as flat as possible? Yes. I don't want them to be twisted. I don't want it to be bulky in some places rather than in others. So I will make sure that those seams are flat before I attach it to the baste it to the batting. What machine do you sew with? I have a Husqvarna Viking. Thank you for 10K. See, I knew y'all could get me there. I have a Husqvarna Viking. This is Emerald Husqvarna Viking. I have a bunch of different machines. This is my baby. I call this my rider. This is the machine that has been with me the longest. And it is the one that, and I call it my rider because when I used to go to quilt classes, this is the one that went with me. And so it used to stay in my trunk. I would take it to the quilt classes. I would get all my quilting done on it. I would use this for quilting the quilts. I will quilt table runners on it. I now have a Bernina, so I have a long arm, so I don't need to use this to do regular quilts, but I will do smaller quilts sometimes on it, especially if I'm doing lines. I'm going to go in, just make sure that those lines line up, and then clip it. So I want to make sure those seams line up, but remember, some of those seams are weak and you don't want them to pull apart if you can help it. So take your time and don't tug, tug, tug. I'm in search of a new one, but I really want a big opening. Absolutely. And so I did get an Opal 650. I stayed with the Viking line. And so I did get an Opal 650 before I got the long arm, because it had a bigger throat. Now, is it that much bigger? No. So there are some quilt machines that have a much bigger throat. I think it depends on how much quilting you're going to do and if it makes sense to buy a long arm or not. So, you know, you do want the biggest throat, but let's be honest. I could show you some quilts that I have. This throat, okay, we don't want to do something wrong here. I don't have a good one. Yes, I do. This throat is about, from the needle, if I have it, it's about 5.5 inches. So this is about as far over as the quilt can go. And then it's about 5.5 inches square in this space. So that means that when I roll the quilt up and I stitch inside and I roll it up to do the quilting, I can only get a 5.5 inch roll up in here to quilt. So it takes a little bit of maneuvering, but trust me, it can get done. And I've done it. So, you know, it depends. Like, there are people like me who will get it done in a smaller throat size, but it's some work. You're going to sweat. And again, that's why this one is my rider. Because we got them done. And those ladies sat and looked at me at the quilt class, and they were like, because they got somebody else to do it. They were paying long armors. I was like, nope. Fabric is too expensive. But that was just me. Whoops. I have quilted on this machine, yes. I don't, like I said, I now have a Bernina, so I don't have to quilt on it, but absolutely, when I first started quilting, this was it. I won't say I didn't have the money. I will say I was being cheap, and I did not want to spend the money to get a long arm. Like, people were, like, there were some people who were buying long arms around me. I also felt like I didn't have the space. So now I don't have the long arm on the frame. My long arm is on a table, so it's a sit down, so it doesn't take up as much space. And the good thing about the sit down is that the table will fold up, so I can tuck it away or use it when I'm having company over. So that was like one of the selling points for me for getting the sit down. And I don't do enough quilting to worry about like these special designs and things like that. We're not there yet. And if we ever get there, we'll trade up. That's my thinking. Okay, here we go. So we're gonna open this up and we're gonna press this. And I'm pressing it to one side just to kind of set that seam. Like I said, I'm gonna go in and I'll press some of these that are twisted a little bit. And that'll help me open up the center seam. And again, if I chose, and that's my choice at the end of the day, I can choose to press these to one side. I didn't have to open up all of these seams. Sometimes I open them up, sometimes I press to one side. So depending on when you're watching me, what videos you were looking at, you may see different things. And you'll see my rationale for those different reasons when I'm doing it. And a lot of it is centered around the bulk. I don't want a lot of bulk where a lot of corners meet up. Okay, and we will get this side. Let me preface, let me see. There we go. Now, if I feel some kind of way, I could add a little bit, like I said, of starch. The starch will help to lay those seams a little bit flatter. But I can go back in, like I said, and get them to lay really flat. And there go the name of one of the starches, called flatter. And I will go back for all of these, and I will press them, because now some of these blocks have been sitting done since August, and they have been folded since August, and they need to be pressed just so that they're nice and flat. Okay. Move that out the way. Okay. And so here is the finished block. So this is the X. Again, we could have changed direction. They called for an X. They did not call for an O. So this could have changed direction, and this could have been an O instead of an X. But for this particular one, they wanted an X. So I will, again, take this to my machine and finish this. Thank you. Thank you, Goddess. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But an easy block. Again, about 2 hours, right? But that's working through the process, talking, answering questions, things like that, to get this finished. But this is not a 2-hour block. So you can absolutely get this block done in a lot quicker of time than it actually took me to make it, because this was on live. But it is absolutely gorgeous. I love these prints. This is Denim and Daisies. My favorite color is orange. I think blue goes with everything. So I love this. And I thank you for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here and keeping me company. So hopefully, you know, I've answered any questions that you may have. Hopefully, you know, you will try this out. Again, we are at the last block for the Jolly Bar 5. This is the Jolly Bar 5 sampler quilt along. I hate when my phone has a video in the background. It drives me crazy. So this is the Jolly Bar book, volume 5. And this is, thank you so much. I enjoyed having you here. Thank you, thank you. This is volume 5, and this has 20 Jolly Bar quilts in there. So there are 20 Jolly Bar quilt, what I like to say, ideas. So they give you the patterns and everything you need to make the Jolly Bar. Inside the front cover for the table of contents, here is the X that we made today. They actually used 3 colors. So they made the same color for the top here and then this one, and then used 2 different colors in there. Again, that's your choice for what you want this to look like. So it could be as scrappy or as monotone as you would like it to be. We've made all of these blocks. So we have made the hatchling, we made the holly berry, we made Northern Lights, Refractions, Scattered Stars, Somersaults, Timberland, Variations, Wind of Flower, and then today XOXO. So we have made all of these. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I tried, Courtney, I tried. So everything is here, but they give you the directions for how to make each quilt block inside the book. Because this is a purchase book, I don't show the measurements or anything else like that. This is what they call a Jolly Bar. Jolly Bar is half of a layer cake. So it is 5 inches by 10 inches, which is about the size of this book. Jolly bars are exclusive to the Fat Quarter Shop. You can find them on their webpage. Link is in my bio to find that information. You can go on there, look at them. The thing I love about the Fat Quarter Shop is that they do sell fabric and other notions and supplies, but you can also get free patterns. So I did work on 2 different free patterns this weekend. All of them are in YouTube. So I did post them there so that you could see the patterns that we worked on. So we worked on the layer cakes this weekend, so that was another pre-cut. So I worked on the layer cake lemonade quilt, and I worked on the layer cake lollies quilt. So those are done. So now it's time to start quilting those quilts. So I need to be working on that, and hopefully I'll get them done before Christmas because they are Christmas colors. So thank you again, everybody, for joining me. Thank you for the gifts for those of you that gifted. It's not a requirement, and but I do appreciate your generosity. Thank you for tapping the screen. We are at 12.1K. So absolutely, thank you for tippity tap tap tapping. Thank you for engaging with me. That is key for me. So that lets me know that somebody out there in the world is interested in what I have to say and or show. So if there's anything else you need, please feel free to DM me. If there's something that you would like me to do a video on, it is not a problem. It helps me think about content. So if you're interested, please make sure that you are checking out the Fat Quarter Shop online for this book and for any of your other quilting needs. Monday has passed. They usually ship out. That's what it looks like to me on a Monday. And then I usually get my things on Thursday. So it's a pretty good deal. They have most of the major brands like Raleigh, Blake, Moda. So they're really good and quality fabric. Here is the Denim and Daisies. So I think this is really great. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. You started a pattern called Ripple. Okay. Oh, yeah, you better than me with them curves. So I can't. But thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm going to act like I know at 11:08. Somebody has to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for her students in the morning. And my principal has been going down in the basement to look for Christmas wrapping paper. So I'm going to go down there and get that, put that by the door, because otherwise I won't remember to bring it with me in the morning. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening. Have a great rest of the week if I don't see you, and a great weekend. Of course, I will be on live a lot more. We're going on Christmas break, and I got things to get done. So I'll see you then. Have a great one.